Hi, my name is Priscilla and I'm a first year medical student at Plovdiv University. So today I'd like to talk to you about academic life here and how to prepare for exams. Before coming here, there's not much that you need to get. Before you start uni, main things that I would suggest buying would be a lab coat, gloves and forceps. But these things you can get from the university road, from some shops that sell it very cheap, so you don't need to worry about bringing it over with you. Other things that I would suggest getting are some books. However, this is probably best to wait until after university actually starts. The reason I say this is because many people have their own personal preference. So for example, I usually use this book, which is the book that the university suggests to us. It was written by the professors, so it's specifically tailored to our course. However, you might also find it useful to buy another atlas such as Sabota or Gray's. But before buying this yourself, you can use the ones that we have available in our university library and see which one is more to your style. Other than that, there are other textbooks for each subject that a lecturer will recommend. And again, I would suggest looking through something before buying it for yourself because it might not work for you. Some subjects such as biology will give you lecture guides, such as this one, that will provide you with all the slides that you need from the various lectures so that you can stay on top of them and perhaps even prepare for the next ones. In terms of our course structure, the main two parts are lectures and what we call practicals. So lectures aren't actually compulsory to attend. However, from personal experience, I would definitely recommend going to as many as possible because it's quite useful to get to know the lecturers and their teaching style. They often provide you with extra helpful resources during the lecture. Especially for subjects such as anatomy and histology where you'll later have orals, it's good to get to know your lecturer beforehand. If they recognise your face, they're more likely to assist you in your exams. There's usually one lecture per subject every week. And other than that, you have practicals. Practicals are slightly more important to attend. They are compulsory. And the reason why it's so important to attend is according to your attendance, you get signed your red book, and each teacher must sign your red book for you to then advance to finals and then eventually on to second year. So it's important to maintain your attendance for these at all costs. So practicals are probably quite similar to A-level lessons in the sense that you have a smaller group to work with. And I prefer this style of teaching because you have your teacher with a group of about 12 to 14 students, and this means you get direct attention from a teacher, extra help, and also a good set of friends to start the year off with when you don't particularly know anyone else here. So our practicals we have for every single subject, especially for the languages. So for the languages, these will probably be your longest practicals. Depending on your group and your teacher, these can range from about 2 hours to 6 hours. My group personally did a few hours of lessons throughout the week. Other teachers will suggest you do a block of lessons over the weekend. So that does mean some people end up having Saturday lessons, although this is quite rare. This was the red book that I mentioned. So your teachers will sign this, and by the end of your finals, you should also receive a grade. The grading system here goes from 2 to 6. A 2 would be a fail, a 3 would be the lowest grade you can get to pass, and a 6 would be the highest grade. So with each subject, you need to attend all your practical lessons in order to get marked off. So for each exam, there's a different structure and how you're marked is varied. So I'll explain that later on. But basically, as long as you pass all of these exams, then you should be able to progress onto second year. How it works if you don't pass an exam is that you're then relegated to the resit period, and this happens during July or early September, and you're given plenty of chances to then pass. And it's not a problem if you do end up failing an exam because the majority of students will have at least one resit, and it's perfectly fine as most of you will pass the second time round. So generally you have quite a few opportunities to pass each exam. However, one thing I would mention is that if you have 2 carryovers, you're allowed to continue into second year. However, if there are more than this, then it means that you can't actually go on to second year and you may have to take a year or a semester out. Essentially, you can carry these onwards until you pass them. However, by third year, you should have passed most of these exams in order to continue. One other subject that's quite important to pass the first time round is Cytology of first year, because you can't actually take the final exam in second year until you've passed this. In first semester, the subjects that you'll be studying will be anatomy, biology, chemistry, medical physics, Bulgarian, Latin, and sports. Chemistry varies depending on which half of the year group you're in. So some people will take it in first semester and some people will take it in second semester. Essentially, you carry on these subjects on second semester, the only difference being instead of medical physics, you will have biophysics, and if you've done chemistry, obviously you won't have that again. And other than that, you have the same subjects. Your timetables can vary quite a lot, depending on your group and just depending on the semester. So for example, in first semester, our days were quite long, so we would start sometimes at 8 or 9 in the morning and finish latest around 5 p.m. Whereas second semester has been much better for us. Although we had 4 7:30 starts a week, it also meant that we never really finished uni later than 12 or 1 p.m, which was quite nice because it meant I had a lot of free time in the afternoon as well as the evening. Again, like I said, your timetable will vary depending on your group and depending on your teachers, but overall you do get a decent amount of free time. Anatomy is obviously one of the most important subjects you'll take as a medic, and the way it's taught is mostly via practical lessons in which you'll be provided with real specimens, and this is really helpful because a lot of universities don't provide this, so we're quite lucky to have that. Usually your teacher will go through a demonstration and then actually allow you to go through it with yourself and with your friends and teach each other, which I find a really helpful way of learning. Another really good thing about anatomy is that they offer consultations, which means you can come in at a scheduled time and there'll be either an older student or a professor to give you extra help if you struggle to pick it up in lessons. Then obviously you have your lectures, which will complement your learning and prepare you for the MCQ section of exams as well as the essay section. So speaking of exams, the way anatomy is usually examined is through colloquiums throughout the year. You will have 3 per semester. Now, I would say these are really important to do as well as you can in. Obviously, if you fail, nothing really happens. If you pass with 80 to 90% and you maintain this average throughout the year, this then means that you can get an exemption. So how exemptions work is that you then have less to study for the final exam because this topic you won't need to cover. So I found that this is really important to try and attain because it does make a lot of difference. It's not to say that if you don't get an exemption you won't pass, because obviously plenty of people do, but it definitely helps. For example, for anatomy, by the end of first year, you're going to need to study all of the practical work that you've done throughout the entire year, as well as this book of MCQs, which, as you can see, has quite a few questions in it. As well as that, you then have to learn at least 90 different essay topics. And as you can imagine, that sounds like a lot. So anything you can do to reduce that amount will definitely help you in the long run. For example, you're offered the same exemption opportunity in other subjects, such as cytology, and having got the exemption for cytology, I can definitely tell the difference in how much work I had to do. Speaking of cytology, this is a subject that you'll only take in second semester. How this works is very similar to anatomy in the sense that you'll have practical lessons. Most of these will be looking at specimens through microscopes, and you'll use this to make up the practical part of your exam. You're also given an MCQ book, which you should learn, and the opportunity to get exemptions throughout the semester. In the final exam, you'll also have the additional essay section. For cytology, it's fewer, so it's only 30 essays, but again, you have to learn them really well and be prepared for whichever one may come up. Usually how it works is 2 titles are picked at random, and then you choose the one that you would prefer. Following this, if you've written a pretty good essay, then you don't need to take an oral, whereas if you are between grades or close to failing, then they'll ask you to come in for an oral, which is when, like I said, it's quite good to have a decent relationship with the lecturers and professors, because if they know you, they're more likely to be lenient in their marking. Other subjects that you'll have to take are biology. Biology is again a year-long subject, so another one where it's really important to prepare from the very start, because if you don't stay on top of it throughout the year, it can build up quite a lot. The content is actually fairly easy to understand and the lecturers are excellent. It's actually one of my favourite subjects for this reason. Some resources such as the lecture guide make it super helpful to try and stay on top of what's going on. The way it's examined is you have 2 colloquiums throughout the year, and these don't technically contribute towards your final grade, but it helps you because it forces you to really get together and try and remember all the information you've learned throughout the year, and I use the resources from that to help me prepare for the final. So biology's exam is a slightly different format in the sense that you just have a written exam. You take a practical exam earlier on in the year during the semester, and if you pass that, then you're fine, you don't have to do it again. Whereas if you haven't passed it the first time, you'll then have to do it after the biology written exam. The written exam is fairly straightforward as long as you go through the lecture notes that are given. We're also given a set of practice questions, and a lot of these are quite similar to the types of questions that come up in the final. So it helps you prepare and you know what to expect. Unlike some of the other subjects, chemistry is only taken for 1 semester. The semester that you take it in depends on which half of the year group you're in. So I did mine in first semester, and how this works is again practicals as well as lectures. So the practicals consisted of 3 colloquiums over the course of the semester, and if you pass the chemistry final, then your grades, average of your grades of these 3 colloquiums will then also contribute towards your grade. So it's kind of helpful to get decent marks because this can boost your grade even further. So chemistry is a straightforward paper, again consisting of all the things you've learned throughout the year. If you're focused on the lectures, which you'll be provided, and your practical booklets that you're given, you'll definitely know all the content you need. Following your written paper, you'll then have an oral with the professor. This is another example of when it's useful to make sure you attend lectures. So the oral is pretty straightforward. Again, you'll be asked questions on things that you've definitely studied and topics that were covered in lectures, so it's fairly easy to pass this. Physics was a subject that I struggled with in particular. Medical physics is known for being one of the hardest subjects to pass the first time at this uni. But I wouldn't worry about it as long as you use the resources given to you, the notes provided. You should be able to pass either on the first try or if it has to be through a resit. Medical physics is taught through a series of practicals, and your practical teacher is definitely there to help you prepare for your exam by explaining any difficult concepts. On top of this, you'll have 1 colloquium for the entire semester, and similar to chemistry, this will only contribute towards your final grade if you pass the written exam at the end. The written exam is a series of MCQs first, and then this is followed by a written section. You'll be told whether you've passed or not within a week, so that you know whether you have to prepare any further. Biophysics is slightly different to medical physics in the sense that the format of the paper is different. So how biophysics works is you're given an MCQ booklet and you learn these, and in the first stage of your exam you have to do MCQs. If you pass the MCQ stage, only then will you be allowed to pass on to the essay stage. For the essays, similar to histology, you have 30 essays that you have to learn, and in this case 2 are picked out at random, but you have to do both essays, and both of the essays have to be done well, and you need to pass this stage to get your final grade. Occasionally you might be asked to do an oral, however for my year group no one was asked to do this. 2 of the other subjects that you're asked to learn is Bulgarian and Latin. So these 2 are very important to pass because you do need them to go on to second year. Latin is only taught in first year, and it's actually quite helpful because it helps you prepare for anatomy by giving you some medical terminology. It's fairly easy to pass as long as you focus throughout the year. You'll have some end of topic tests, and these will help your teacher understand your level and focus on helping those who may need it. As long as you ask your friends for help, it's definitely passable and not a subject that you should really worry about. Bulgarian is also obviously quite important, not just because we're living here and it would be good to learn the language, but also to prepare you for clinical stages later on from third year onwards. So you learn Bulgarian for the first 2 years whilst you're here. For this reason, your Bulgarian final at the end of first year doesn't actually contribute towards your final grade at the end of second year. So your grade is not actually written in your red book. However, it is really important to try and stay on top of things, because while it's a fairly easy subject to pass, it can get quite overwhelming if you again let it build up without understanding what's going on. However, your teachers are super helpful and very understanding of all different learning abilities, so they will help you do your absolute best to pass. Sports is another subject that we have to take here, which is slightly different to the UK. However, it's a really enjoyable subject actually, because you end up spending a lot of time with people in your group and doing something slightly different to the standard academic lessons. So some of the options you'll have will be swimming, table tennis, basketball, football, and more. This is a really good time to just relax and de-stress from regular uni life. And the way it's graded is actually quite straightforward. As long as you attend most of your lessons and they're seeing some kind of progress in your ability, then you will pass. So again, second semester Biophysics was slightly harder because it's quite different to most of the subjects that many of the medical students take for A-levels. However, it's definitely much easier to understand than medical physics, as it's quite linked to biology. Anatomy definitely gets slightly more complicated in second semester because it's neuroanatomy. It's one of those subjects that you either understand or you don't on your first try. However, it's definitely manageable, and like I said, speaking to your friends and asking for help will definitely make it more manageable. Another thing that I would say is with Bulgarian and Latin, your language subjects will become definitely more important in second semester, however, because this is when you'll have your final exams and when you'll be assessed on your overall progress. So I would say definitely make sure you're focusing on those. Your finals for those will be in May, so slightly earlier than your other exams, which will be in June, which means that you should have plenty of time to prepare for those. So in general, most of your subjects are definitely manageable, but one thing I would definitely recommend is starting early with all your work. In terms of content, there is a lot to learn. However, it is easy to understand. So I would suggest perhaps taking time out at the end of each week to go over what you've learned. This means that when it comes to finals, it's not a case of learning everything from scratch, but actually just going over what you already understood. Another tip that I would give you is definitely reaching out to professors, emailing your teachers if you don't understand something, because they're there to help you at the end of the day and they want you to pass. Another suggestion would be to speak to your fellow students, which is something I found particularly useful. For example, I struggled with subjects such as medical physics, and so I would ask friends who are better at this, whilst I would help others with things such as Latin and Bulgarian. And in this sense, it means that everyone can help each other out, and you don't have to struggle through revising by yourself. There are plenty of places in Plovdiv, such as cafes that are open until late, and especially during exam season, they get quite full with students because it's a nice, relaxing environment to study in if you don't feel like revising at home. An important question for many students will be the holidays. So despite what you might be hearing about holidays here, we actually get a decent amount. Although it might not be as much as some students in the UK get, we get at least a week, usually 2 for Christmas, 1 week off in February after the January exam period before second semester starts, and another week in April. So the main reason why we get these holidays is because we usually arrange with our teachers to double up on some of our lectures or our practical lessons in order to get earlier breaks, and it's completely worth it, and most teachers are willing to compromise with us on this. So also throughout the year we get plenty of bank holidays for various national festivals, and this is really nice because you get 3-day weekends which are celebrated here whilst also getting to take part in some Bulgarian festivities. Obviously, depending on your group, it will depend how much free time you get during the week. However, for most people, your weekends are free to do as you want, and there is plenty of things going on in Plovdiv. For example, the most famous thing would probably be the Kapana Fest, which happens twice a year and is definitely not one to be missed. There's plenty of events during the day and during the night, including an outdoor cinema, loads of pop-up stands, live performances, and it's just a really exciting thing to take part in, especially as someone who's new to the country. Other than that, there's a lot of restaurants that you can try here, international cuisines, and you will never really run out of things to do in Plovdiv. It's quite a small city, however, if you're willing to explore, you'll definitely find something to keep yourselves occupied and interested. One of my favourite things about going to this university is that it's fairly small, which means that all the students know each other and we all help each other out. This is really useful because when you speak to older years, they're always willing to give you tips and their resources and advice. And it's also really important to have a strong group of friends here, as obviously we're all far away from home, and the international community is super welcoming, and it means that you never feel alone or like you're missing out. This was my experience of first year of medicine at Plovdiv. I hope you found this video useful, and if you have any further questions, feel free to leave some in the comments below. And good luck to everyone who's applying to come here, and I hope to see you all soon.